Welcome to Bold Talk series, where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Neal McNamara, founder and CEO of Virtas Partners. Neal, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Epi.
Great. Neal, let's start first with your background. You spent years inside some of the biggest firms, including KPMG, leading complex transactions. What was the exact moment you realized you needed to build something of your own? And what did you see missing in the industry that Virtas was born to fix?
Okay. So that definitely became clear in the early days, I would say, in my last role. Running a 350-person consulting business at KPMG. My first realization, which is pretty cool when this happens in your career, was that all things started coming together in a way that I knew that I was built to run a firm, run a practice, run a firm. It was almost 20 years of experience came together. It was like, oh, wow, this is what I'm built to do. So that was pretty cool. But the other thing that I realized in that role was that I had 100% P&L responsibility for a $200 million business, and I got to make maybe 25% of the decisions that actually drove the results. And to add insult to injury, I disagreed with well over half the remaining 75% that were made for me. So I'm excited on one hand that I'm doing what I was built to do, and I'm frustrated as heck on the other and becoming very disenfranchised with how the firm was run. And so I developed a vision during that time for leading and operating a firm in a deliberately different way. And eventually that led to me determining that the best way to go about that was to found my own firm and build the firm that I wanted to lead.
Amazing. So you're not just another consulting firm. I was looking at your profile. You call it a SEAL team of senior experts operating with speed and precision. What does that look like in practice?
So the typical, like you said, it's a good point. Like the typical traditional consulting firm execution model is a highly leveraged model. So, effectively, consulting firms historically have made their money in driving lots and lots of hours to very junior resources that don't get paid a lot. That's just kind of the inside baseball and how the financials work inside of a consulting firm. So what that effectively does is that results in clients paying for the consulting firms teaching junior resources how to actually do this work. So we flipped that on its head to that traditional model, and this is where we talk about that SEAL team, where instead of having this traditional model where you've got one very senior and capable and talented person leading a team with a bunch of junior people who don't really know what they're doing, but they're doing the majority of the work and learning on the job. We flip that on its head and say, all right, we're going to drop in, a band of very experienced experts at what they do that only have like one junior person supporting them in this reverse pyramid model that they can come in and make quick progress and bring real value to the clients. So, value in our business is the expertise, not the bodies. And so, dropping that in, and we call that kind of the appropriate leverage model, where our clients are paying very high rates for people that are great at what they do, bringing a tremendous amount of value, and that are also appropriately supported by more junior people. So you're also not paying very senior people that are expensive to do more basic tasks. So that was that reverse pyramid model that we implemented here to execute things in a different way.
Yeah, interesting model. And talking about the model itself, so you work with private equity backed SaaS and AI startups to aerospace and healthcare companies. What's one pattern you see in business going through major transitions, and how do we get to the root of what they actually need? There's a lot of time.
That's an easy one. Especially for what we do and what we focus on, the absolute consistent pattern is that there are constituents of financial information. Those constituents could be owners, board members, lenders, etc., that simply aren't getting timely and accurate data that they need to fulfill their roles, again, as an owner, as a lender, as a, as a board member. And there are multitude of reasons that this is happening, and they're not able to assess it. And so, again, with our model, with the experience level and the people that have assessed this and solved this hundreds of times over, we can parachute a team in that literally in hours can assess at least what the problem is, right? And say, okay, this is why this is happening. Now it's more complicated on how do you fix it, but that's the next step. So that, the only way to do this is to parachute people in to assess this that have solved it multiple times, have seen many different reasons for this failure and these challenges, that again can then think through, okay, now how are the ways we've solved this in the past? What's the smartest way to solve this problem?
Yeah. Yeah, I always like to apply that to the especially on the when it comes to making some major decisions, apply this AAA format like acknowledge, accept, take action, right? And that
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot clarify a lot of things. When you're going and working with these companies, how difficult it comes to for them to acknowledge and accept that they need what you're recommending.
Yeah, well, yeah, that depends, right? I mean, sometimes it's quite obvious because the finance organization or the management team is getting really beat up by the owners, for example, on their inability to explain. And so sometimes actually the acknowledge and accept is very easy because the finance leaders have understand that they need help. So you have on one side of the spectrum, sometimes that isn't very difficult, and we always come in under the premise of, hey guys, we're just here to help you deliver this, and we're here to help you. We're also here to help the owners, depending on how we're brought in. And sometimes those finance organizations are underwater and understand, man, they love that they've got some help, some pros coming out to solve this problem, because they don't have maybe they don't have just the capacity. They may not have the capability, but they may not have the capacity to figure this out and solve it within the construct of what has to happen day to day. And then on the other side of the spectrum, sometimes they don't realize how badly they're failing. And we are brought in, by, this happens in private equity quite a bit. It's like, we don't know that this is the right team. We need you to come in and assess whether this is the right team and what needs to be done. So, that's a much more difficult dance on getting that team, broadly speaking, to accept. Maybe you can then get the CEO of the management team to accept that, because maybe he or she has seen that finance organization's failing him or her. And sometimes we have to come in and then tell the owners, like, this isn't the right team. You got to move it at you've got to move on them, and we need to build out a new and better team. And it's kind of like and there's everything in between there. Now in a change of control event, that's actually quite common. So it's almost understood, taking on First Institutional Capital, that the finance organization that was part of a family-run business is not the finance organization that now is reporting up to new private equity investors, board members, and a new lender there. And so it just makes sense that that would need to be upgraded to a more professional run organization. So again, that's where you get that's in that phase of the easier to acknowledge and accept and move on, because that's just natural.
Yeah. Now, Neal, you build across cities like Chicago, Atlanta, LA. You kept the intimacy and agility of boutique firm. How do you scale a value-driven company without diluting the DNA and made it work in the first place?
Yeah, I very thoughtfully and deliberately, and it's hard, and it can be done. It's much more difficult to be done if you're scaling fast. It's much less complicated. I won't say easy. It's much less complicated, and I think you make fewer mistakes if you're able to scale at a much more measured pace. So that's kind of the trick. And it starts by ensuring that you're evaluating people that you're bringing on, again, very deliberate, detailed way to assess whether this person really can fit in and is going to thrive in this organization. Because I've got one of these t-shirts, these funny t-shirts say, I'm not for everyone. And it's my family. And it's totally right. And I'm like, we actually should get a Virtas branded one. We aren't for everyone.
Yeah.
And there's certain people, profiles, all these that'll thrive, and some just simply won't. And so you really want to get to that. As I was having this conversation yesterday with a managing director that's coming, that's evaluating whether he wants to leave a much, much larger firm and come and work in our environment. And I say this often, it's like, I'm not recruiting you. I want you to really dig in and figure out whether you think you will thrive in this environment. I don't want you to come here in 6 months, figure out you won't, that you're not, and that frustrates you so I want this to be completely open kimono. I want you to talk to multiple people, understand the good, bad, and the ugly, because again, our structure comes with benefits, and as with all of them, there are cons to the structure and things you don't get here that you will other places.
Yeah.
And you need to really come in open-minded and just understand very openly what those are, and then determine whether you think you're going to thrive in this environment. So that's part of our talent assessment, recruiting, whatever you want to call it. We are not trying to convince people to come here. In fact, a lot of times we tell people, you're not ready for this environment. You need to see something a little less structured, a little less supported, a little more entrepreneur first, and maybe a interim step between us and the monster firms, to make sure that it's not going to drive you nuts, because it's so different unless you're really looking for so different. I think the other thing you have to do as you grow and scale and go from, a smaller firm, a mid-sized firm, to a larger firm, which is the natural evolution if you want to grow and you don't want to just stay as a small boutique, you really have to fight the temptation to do things that can negatively impact the culture of the organization. And it's really easy to fall into, well, now that we're bigger, not like anything, right? As you grow, you have to add more structure. So that it's not like you can't add more structure, but you have to fight off the structure that can negatively impact the culture of the organization. And that's like adding multiple layers of administration and, I'll call non-value added roles. And I'll say non-value added activities. The typical one, hey, we're bigger now and we're dispersed. So we need to form a bunch of ERGs to make sure our people are happy. I've never spoken to anybody in any organization that has given 1 ounce of value to the ERGs that were formed by their organization. And mostly they're spoken about with disdain. Yeah. And so, avoiding that temptation is also critical in maintaining that culture and that environment.
Well said. Neal, you work with some great top private equity firms in the world. What do the best operators do differently doing transactions? Where do most get it wrong from your experience?
I think it starts and ends with people. I think it's that the people decisions are where the rubber hits the road on the ability to create value or to attract value in these organizations. Seeing, again, I think the best case scenarios are those that can come in very quickly and assess the talent, and that's even part of their investment thesis, is that they're backing strong management teams and can evaluate whether they're strong enough or not. And then the ones that I think that have created value slower or maybe detracted value over the hold period is they're too slow to act in talent issues. So having too much patience, which again, we aren't exclusively serving private equity, but we really are serving quite a bit in the middle market in private equity. And it is interesting to see the different approaches that these funds will take on how heavy-handed they are with the management teams and how they give them more or less rope. And I've really seen just way too much patience and really knowing that these are not the right people in these roles, and you just got to do the hard thing and move them out and replace them. And it's been, it's frustrating to watch your client, your client do that, and because you're there and you want them to be successful. So I think really I think talent is I would say the biggest difference
Yeah.
there, and then the moving on that talent fast is what's going to be a big value creation lever and value detractor level when you don't do it fast enough.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, it's all about people. And I've seen this before where one leader was a bottleneck that completely was not allowing the flow, the real flow to happen. And to make that hard decision, which it's painful, but
It's painful. Nobody likes doing it.
no one
You
like,
only like doing it if you're really quite a jerk. I mean, it's hard. Some of the hardest stuff we do. I mean, I have a people business, so that's yeah, that's always front and center. But it's relevant in every industry.
done. Now, Neil, always like to ask, this is a short format conversation. Always like to ask this a last question to all my guests to get different perspective. And that is about the word bold. What does that mean to you personally?
Huh? That's a good question. I would say, how I would consider bold, because I think some of the things that we do are actually, bold in the way I would define that is I think being out front and center, really going about things your way. And it's not about my way's better than another, but my way's my way. And I say this often on just when I talk about other peers, in the industry. It's not that we are doing things necessarily better than my peer that founded or is running another firm. They're doing it differently. They're doing it different than us. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with what that means, even if that means we grow slower or do things differently, not building for an exit, things like that. And so I think, I would say being bold is really about going about, your holding firm to your principles, going about it your way, and being kind of, and the bold and being front and center about this is what we do and why we do it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm
Yeah.
not for everyone. We're not for everyone, and that's okay. I think that's being bold.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you hit the nail there because, being clear what's your portion and having that clarity, it's so important. And that's what a lot of people they struggle. Like I talk to so many people from different parts of the world, different backgrounds, running different businesses. And I cannot tell you how important that they always come back to that clarity is what I got here. And so that is a great way to end this podcast. Neil, so great to see you. Thank you for joining this Bold Talk series. And I'm looking forward to connect again with you in the near future. Until that time, take care, be great, and be bold always. Bye-bye.
Thank you.